One, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three. Jimmy D, Marilyn.
Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation, and we're here back at A.C.E Media for another episode of My Story, a special episode. And I'm delighted to be joined by another band on the channel. It is the Anonymous Iconoclasts. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi there.
They are anonymous, so you don't get to know their names.
I'm not here.
No, it's just a thing. So we're going to hear your story, gentlemen, and kind of just hear like how you got into music, your journey, I guess, and all that sort of stuff, how the band got together. We'll get to it all. But the first question I've been asking people recently is, what is the first song that you ever listened to that you remember kind of getting into? Going back some time for my case, I had to really think when I thought about it for myself.
Shall I answer?
Yeah.
Well, my parents liked music, so it's difficult, because I was probably hearing music when I was very young. But the first song that I really remember, and we bought the single, was Michael Rode the Boat Ashore.
Okay.
Michael Rode the Boat Ashore. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Hallelujah. That's the first one. I can't remember who it was by, but that's the first song that springs to mind.
And what about you?
So my dad was a bit like me. So he was a bit tight. So when he bought a record
So
player.
he hit saucepans. That was your first recollection.
He brought his record player home. I think I remember the make. It was made by a company called Rygonda Bolshoi, which is a Russian company, and it came with this a demo album, and it had the sound of ducks flying across the room and all the rest of it. You could follow them from left to right and all the rest of it. But he inflicted his music taste on us. He bought good news, Dad. You bought us a record player. Bad news, he's buying all the records. So when I was growing up, I was listening to stuff like Joe Loss Orchestra and Parnell and all these kind of jazz people. Hasn't had any influence on me, but yeah, the first music I heard would be imposed on me by my dad through his Rygonda Bolshoi cheap and cheerful Russian stereo system, and it would have been Joe Loss.
Okay, so I follow that up with, what was the most recent song that you listened to, so that we can kind of see where those two songs meet in the middle.
Well, for me, it's I was listening to, what the hell are the name of the band? John Scofield is in them, and a guy called Neon plays bass. Something Gold. I can't remember. But the track was called Cornish Hen.
Okay.
And it's very much like a funky, jazzy type of thing.
Okay.
And in fact, we're going to play it tonight with the Brewsters.
Hey.
Yeah.
Cool.
Playing tonight in the Old Hague.
Here we go.
Anyway.
Most recent song that you listened to?
Well, I can't remember any of the bands, but my daughter is home from university, and so she was cooked. We had a rare Sunday dinner. We haven't had one for a couple of months. It's quite nice every now and again, a Sunday dinner. And while she was doing it, she was playing her music off her phone, Spotify stuff. And she's got quite good taste in music. And a lot of it actually, quite a number of different acts actually. A lot of them sounded just like Bon Iver. So I'm quite a big Bon Iver fan. It seems to me that Bon Iver have had more of an influence on breaking through acts now than I'd imagined, with the kind of the high vocals and the lovely production techniques and all the rest of it. So with a bunch of them, they all sounded pretty similar to me. It must be an age thing, but a lot of it nodded towards Bon Iver, which I thought was really positive.
Interesting. So do you think, are your musical tastes kind of quite similar to what they were when you're, in your younger days, or would they, like when you were a kid, when you're first getting into music and things like that, or do you think they've kind of developed and become a bit more eclectic?
Well, Keir will probably give you a totally different answer to this, but in my case, I worked in professional radio for like many years, and so therefore I was kind of introduced to a lot of different music. So I always had new stuff coming in, and when I was on the radio, much like you're doing for us today, which is thank you very much for doing this, is very much there to support up and coming bands,
Indeed, yeah.
showcase bands, putting on gigs and that kind of stuff. And my wife, who Kia will know as well, is a music-aholic, and she's always playing me new stuff. So we listen to new stuff all the time. What I do totally agree with is a comment by John Peel from years ago, where he said no one wants to listen to their record collection from when they were a teenager for the rest of their lives, you know,
Yeah.
which I would wholeheartedly support, because that's how the radio industry wants us to be. They want Keo to listen to stuff when he was 16, 17, and me likewise, and so on. But it doesn't really work that way. And in Keo's case, because he plays guitar in a range of different styles of bands, he's probably heard a lot of stuff that I've never even heard, I would imagine.
I'm not being ignorant. I want to find that track.
Yeah. I can see it was...
Cornish Hen is by John Schofield. What are they called? Let me just do that and say.
Here's how intermediate and
Mono Neon?
You'd have been trying to think of it
Yeah,
otherwise for the whole thing, wouldn't it?
Soon I got to wait for the bloody ad to finish.
Mono Neon, I think they're called.
Oh, there you go. No, they're called Scary Goldings,
Right.
and that was the name of the band. But a great sort of keyboard player, a great unit. You should check that out, people.
Indeed.
Scary Goldings.
So,
Sorry.
it's all right, not a problem at all. So you play a range of different styles in guitar.
Yeah.
Was the guitar the first instrument that you got into playing?
No, piano. I did piano. My auntie was a music teacher, and she tried to teach me piano and gave up after probably 2 or 3 sessions, because she realised that I wasn't interested in actually learning anything theoretically. I was just banging the piano, making up tunes on the piano before I knew how to play it. And that has been my entire musical journey, really, is sort of making stuff up as I go along. I know more theory now than I used to, but pretty much I started from the sort of improvisation angle. I had a friend who decided to play bass, and we just jammed together all the time, and that's how we learned to play.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with someone a couple of weeks back that, like, I always liked the idea of playing music. I always fancied myself. I think I'll play the guitar or the drums or something. But whenever, because my little brother had an electric guitar, which he used to have lessons and the rest of it, but I didn't have the patience for music in the same way that I had for football and cricket, where because when I would get down to doing them, I was in it then. But whenever someone would try and teach me an instrument or music, even though I liked the idea of being able to do it, I didn't have the same drive and the passion to do the initial part of it.
I think you soon find out if you've got that or not, because you do have to work at it quite hard. I mean, it takes a lot of hours to sort of, with anything, I suppose, but yeah, music's very much like that.
What about you? What was your sort of initial venture into music?
Oh, it was guitar, and in my case it would have been probably 76, 77 when the punk was coming through, and my mates said, well, let's form a band, they'd all learn 3 chords and play song stuff, and I remember I was playing a guitar. It was an Antoria guitar, quite a cheap guitar. My first song that I really loved was the Ramones tune. It was a punk rocker, so around about those kind of times, and my guitar had a few bashes on it, and so I decided to remove all the paint from it, but I did it with like a chisel.
We've all done it.
A chisel and a hammer. And I took it to the guitar shop when they needed some work, and when I went back to pick it up on the ticket, it said Antoria Plank. Yeah, so guitar was it, but I never been like a lead player, virtuoso type player. I'm more of a kind of know a few chords and a songwriter, really, more than a.
You're a songwriter
player, yeah.
So was it always music for you guys, sort of, as you go through those kind of formative years in your teenage into adult, I guess? Was it always music was your thing, or did you have other interests as well? What was kind of, I'm interested in what you were like as teenagers, I guess, because you always get to learn a bit more about people when you see what they were like as a teenager and what they kind of developed into as they matured.
I think what I like to think that one of the reasons I'm not a better guitarist than I am is because I like variety. So I do like different things. I love photography. I'm into photography, and when I was a teenager, I was into girls, and later on, it was photography as well. And and to some extent sport, like squash. I love squash. I'm still doing all those sort of things, apart from the girls maybe. But yeah, I like to. I like to mix it up a little bit. But you see people like Hendrix, for example, who carried his guitar with him everywhere and played all the time, and that's one of the reasons why he was so brilliant. And those sort of people, who tend to be at the top of their whatever they're doing, they're totally obsessed,
completely immersed in it, and every day.
And that's great. But yeah.
What about you as a teenager? How did you mature?
I haven't.
No.
Yet.
Well, I find that's the best way. I've got to be honest. But
music and sport. Playing sport with my mates and watching Cardiff City from a young age. But Keo's not into football or Cardiff City.
Don't talk about football.
Which is fine. But I grew up with it, so I've always been into Cardiff City, and singing and songwriting from quite an early age. Actually, something that happened when I was a kid. It's nice having this kind of conversation because I've learned already loads of stuff about Keo that I didn't know.
Okay.
Probably vice versa. So when I was a kid, my dad brought home another cheap second-hand thing, but it was an old reel-to-reel, and I was kind of fascinated by this reel-to-reel. That you could like make noises and they you could hear them back. And like playing with the voice and playing with sounds, and that's always stuck with me all my life. Because I'm a lecturer in kind of sound and audio stuff. But it was like that early fascination with gadgets and things you can make sounds with, and I love the physicality of the old reel-to-reel.
Yeah, I went through the same thing with the reel-to-reels.
Yeah.
I remember finding a reel-to-reel sound-on-sound recorder.
Oh, right.
Probably was one of the first things you could double track on.
Yeah.
And I made loads of recordings on that.
It's fantastic fun.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
Obviously, you being the songwriter, who do you think is the best songwriter?
Who do I like as a songwriter?
Yeah, who do you think is maybe some of the best?
Keo's also a songwriter, by the
okay.
way, and he does have a couple of songs on the album.
Yeah.
I was only thinking about this again the other day, really. I think as a lyricist, I would say the best lyricist, in my opinion, who's ever lived is probably Bob Dylan. But someone who runs him close is someone who I know Keo likes, who's Leonard Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in terms of lyricism and the ability to spin tales and go off down tangents and not run out of things to say, Bob Dylan's phenomenal for that, as is Leonard Cohen. But the other guy I also admire, and I think Keo admires a bit as well, as a songwriter, is Tom Petty. Because with Tom Petty, we don't do that many covers in the band, but we do a couple of Tom Petty songs, one of which he sings. Maybe but two of which he sings, actually, I think.
That's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He sings both Tom Petty songs.
Petty style voice for some reason.
So Tom Petty's a good thing to talk about. So from my point of view, what I love about, and I'll hand over to Keo, is with Tom Petty, I like the simplicity of the ideas, the way he plays with words, sometimes like fairly simple chord patterns as well, but it comes back to melody and feel and meaning.
Yeah, he just has this beautiful sort of simple way of putting stuff together, doesn't he? The words are, there's nothing, like you said, it's not complicated at all. But I don't know, they just really work. There's something really genuine about them, I suppose.
I'm thinking when you said Bob Dylan, and you went through a couple of names. I was waiting for Jim Morrison just because I'm a big fan and have been since my teens all the way through. And it's funny you said about that John Peel quote. My wife quite often will change the radio station in the car as soon as she gets in, because she knows I've either got Talk Sport on or I've got absolute 70s, 80s, 90s, because I don't know, maybe it's because as soon as my kids are in, I got 3 teenage boys, so as soon as they're in the car, my wife, they will put on some sort of more modern music, I guess, which doesn't always appeal to me. I like hip hop and I like sort of house music and stuff like that. My range of musical taste is quite vast, but I find it difficult to get through pop music, like genuine cheesy pop music, and that's right up my wife's alley. I can do a couple, but not for long. So the first thing she does in the car is change the channel. But I think I am, because I don't listen to music, perhaps as much as I used to before I had kids. I think that my musical tastes have not stopped, but they've stayed very similar, I reckon, to probably
Yeah.
what they were 10
That
years
happens to all
ago.
of us,
Well,
doesn't
maybe
it?
18 years ago.
Most people do that.
Yeah.
Just because they take up your time,
Yeah.
they steal the radios, they steal the TVs, and you have to share.
Is that your wife or your kids?
Well, all of them. There's too many of them. I'm outnumbered. But no, it's interesting because I'm always interested to talk about people's kind of musical tastes and influences, simply because I know mine are sort of one extreme to the other. So I could listen to like Tupac or something, but I could also listen to Jim Morrison or Bob Dylan or things like that, and I'd be perfectly happy with both. Whereas a lot of people seem, at least in my experience of kind of speaking to people, they tend to veer to sort of one side or the other.
Yeah.
So it's quite rare.
I think it's a bit of a musician thing as well. But I mean, but you're non-musician,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, you quite often find that with musicians, if they're any good anyway.
Mm.
You know, is that they listen to a lot of different types of music, and it comes out in their music somewhere probably. But yeah, maybe I'm being a bit unfair. 'Cause my brother's not a musician, and he, listens to loads of different stuff as well. But yeah.
But you as a guitarist, I mean, Simon might be interested in, your love of people like Jeff Beck and this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, of course.
Guitarists, that you're really inspired by.
Yeah, absolutely. All those sort of guitars. I mean, Jeff Beck was obviously like a genius. I mean, for me, it's very hard for me to talk about what I like in particular, because I do like quite a lot of different stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
it's
course.
like you said, you've got like a vast sort of taste sort of variant, and yeah, I feel the same way really.
It's difficult to nail one down then, isn't it? When
Yeah.
someone asks you like to name one or name a couple. But what sort of influence did you think you took previously and then you take now in terms of other guitarists? Has that changed over the years, or?
Yeah, it changes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I'm more sort of bluesy now than I ever used to be, but that's tinged with a bit of a jazz stuff as well. So it's somewhere in between sort of jazz and blues. That's probably my main style, and that's crossed in jazz because influenced Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and all the way through. All those sort of top guys, and then on the blues side, we've got Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then some loads of the old black guys, the sort of B.B. King and all the other kings. So all that sort of stuff, I'm really influenced by. But I'm also influenced by sort of avant-garde stuff, something a bit out there.
Okay.
Quite often that will grab my attention, and I like classical sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Not
okay,
huge.
you're among friends. It's all right.
But yeah, so all sorts of stuff.
What about influences for you? Because you said you like obviously you had an interest in songwriting from quite an early age.
Mm.
I liked the idea of writing like a song or something like that, but I was always I could write quite good poetry, which I think probably came from the amount of Doors I listened to and other naughty things that I shouldn't have been doing as a teenager, which kind of influenced that side of it. But I was always kind of interested in the way Jim Morrison wrote, as much as I liked the Doors music. I think I'd read like one of his poetry books and stuff like that. Was it always like a songwriting thing for you, or was there other avenues of writing as well?
Yeah, I wrote short stories. I wrote written poetry. Nothing really that serious. We used once when we were doing a gig, and we were playing in Club Bont in Pontypridd, and it was a typical band moment. Keo decides he needs to go to the toilet. We're in the middle of a gig, so Keo's off. And this is the only time I ever recounted the poem, was there just to fill him in. So while he came back, it went down fairly well at the time. But I do a lot of reading. If you talk about the kind of people I like to read, people like Kerouac and Hunter S. Thompson and these kind of people, I like kind of like fairly eccentric, stuff which kind of with Hunter S. Thompson, he was almost like speaking in tongues, you know. It just came flowing out of him, and I like that. I like really interesting, unusual stuff. Something which does something different. And I want to say about Keo as a guitarist, which he'll take as a compliment, but it's very true. I mean, listening to the album now, Send in the Suits, there's a real nice diversity of music on that album. Actually, it really goes into a number of different genres, and Keo's done a great job with the guitars. He's thought about his parts and played them in, and they've been layered and everything else. It sounds really, really good. When we play live, I know one thing for sure: if we do a solo of any single song on that album, it'd be a great solo, and it won't be the solo I heard last week.
Okay.
Every time he does a solo, he plays something different. So that's your kind of thinking on that, isn't it?
I like to improvise. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you have to be comfortable with each other, I'm guessing, to be able to pull that off.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're not, and the guy next to you starts doing something completely different, which you've never kind of heard before,
Yeah.
could throw you off.
What happens
Could
to us
throw
every
some
time
people
we
off.
play?
Or you,
They all stand around sort of staring at you.
We have cues, don't we? Kind of bounce off each other, don't we?
or I was going to say, you can not care.
Yeah, there's
As
also
well,
it's
yeah.
also available.
No, but it's true. Yeah, we've all known each other for so long. So
Yeah, yeah. How did you guys meet then?
oof.
Well, we played together in bands a little bit, not for very long. Years ago, back in the 80s, I had a small record deal, and there was a change of personnel. We brought you in as a guitarist, if you remember on that. But then Keo's played with, Keo's been playing with so many popular bands in Cardiff over the years. He's
It's
kind
just
of
not popular with people generally.
he's a fairly well-known guitarist,
Yeah.
and so
A legend in my own lunchtime.
in the kind of music kind of community, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a good friend of Keo's is Mike DeBass, and he's got a studio at home. His wife introduced me to my wife. I've never quite forgiven her for that one, but fair enough. Yeah. And so
Didn't mean it, Colette.
they're best friends. I went over there one day. Hadn't done any music for years, to be honest. I'd given up on music altogether. And Mike showed me the studio, and he said, "Oh, you got loads of songs, haven't you?" So I just started playing, and
That was all Mike's fault, was it?
here we are, 3 albums later.
Right.
That's cool. I always like listening to people's
It's Mike's fault.
kind
It's
of
Mike's fault.
the
with you.
story of how people meet, because it's always different, isn't it, for every kind of person.
And we brought Keo in later on, I should say, and,
Oh, yeah.
and I'll say it on record. I was really over the moon that he was joining the band. I didn't know it was going to be his thing, and it's just made a big difference for us ever since. Actually,
So was he first choice?
Thanks.
yeah, he was certainly top of the list. If we wanted a guitarist, Keo would have been the top of the list.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, that's what you're saying now.
One thing I was going to ask you actually is, in the kind of time of watching, listening, going to live music, I was wondering if there's ever been an artist or a band where they've kind of not just surprised you, but like you've been genuinely blown away by the talent that they've shown, whether it's the voice or a guitar solo or the drumming, anything, just where you've been genuinely blown away.
I stay away from that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because you start watching and you think, oh, why am I bothering? So just stop it. It's the same when you see these vids with kids who are like they're about 6 years old and they're playing geniuses on guitar and drums. As soon as I see that, I'd turn it off because it just makes me feel bad. I mean, I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
But I think,
No, I can
well, hang
understand
on, what was
that
I
as well.
doing when I was 6 years old?
Yeah.
Not that, but that's for sure.
Yeah, it's the internet, isn't it?
I'm just a selfish. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can say
I'm just a
anything you want.
selfish bastard.
What about you? Have you ever been do you remember a band or an act that kind of blew you away?
I've been to so many gigs. It's just trying to think of one off the top of my head, which was really had. There's different emotional experiences with gigs. It kind of depends on the stage in the career which you see people. Sometimes you see people, and not long after that, they're no longer with us, so that kind of makes it special. Keo's more of an out-and-out musician than me, so I'm sure when he's at gigs, he's kind of, thinking about the technicalities of things and how is he doing this and how he's done that. I'm sure he's inspired by stuff that way. And he's also very song based. He's not away from. He's not totally just lost in musicianship. But in my case, I suppose I'm as a songwriter more so. I'm more hooked into the sentiment, the song, what it's about, the circumstances of the gig, the emotional experience of it. Really,
it's interesting. I used to in my 20s, in the sort of the years before I met my wife,
the golden years,
the memorable years, the peaceful years, as someone said. No, it was like my sort of late teens, early 20s. I used to go to, come into Cardiff every weekend, and we used to go to sort of gigs around pubs and clubs. We used to go to Barfly every Friday and Saturday. That was kind of where we would end up. And they would normally have, a couple of bands on, particularly earlier in the week, and then you'd have decent music on the weekends. And I always remember, like, we saw, like, I could probably, off the top of my head, name 4, 5, 6 bands where we would listen to them, and no one had really heard of them at that point, to have them their sort of hardcore little group, which they take around them from city to city. And the amount I look back and I think, they're gonna go somewhere, or I think they're gonna go, and they just kind of just fade away or peter out or split up. And I think sometimes people don't realise the sheer numbers of bands who are vying for gigs and record deals and everything which comes with it.
Just had a band pop into my head which and they really impressed me. They're called No Violet, and they're a Bristol-based band, and they were pretty much students. I don't know if they'd actually finished their courses or not, but they were quite a young bunch, and they played in. I saw them in the Welsh Club downstairs. No, the Moon. Sorry. I saw them in the Moon, and they were just brilliant. They're playing their own material, and they had this girl singer, and she was just fantastic. But it was really just, I don't know, it was just emotionally very good, and what they were doing, they technically, everything was great about it. Anyway, that's what I remember.
So say you're doing a gig or whatever now, would you take in the other acts on the bill?
Oh yeah,
generally,
definitely.
Because some people, I think, lock themselves away a little bit, and they're kind of not interested in what else is going on the stage.
Well, a good example of that, and Keir probably have more to say about it than me, but a good example of that is if you go to open mics or jam nights, I mean, for example, the one at the Earl Hague, which is probably the best in terms of, I think, musicianship, probably in Cardiff. It's a real musicians' meeting place. I think if you went along there, just did 3 songs and said ta-da, then just jump back in your car, I think that'd be really, really rude.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea to stick around and support the other acts, and just just encourage them, whether you like them or not. Really, it's just the right thing to do. Would you say?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've left, not stayed right to the end of the night sometimes.
You stay there, don't you?
But there's a feeling, you want to hang around really, just out of respect for everyone else.
Yeah, I suppose if you just disappear, like play
do
your
your
songs
thing and go, then it's a bit
out.
rude, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to at least look like you're trying not to be rude.
Yeah, that's why we struggle.
Got to stay for at least one drink, I suppose, should be the rule, shouldn't it?
But no, the Earl Hague in particular, I mean, it is great, that jam night on a Monday night. You do get some fantastic people there, some fantastic players.
So you've got this album out recently, Send in the Suits, but you've also, was it 2 albums you've put out before that?
Yes, it's our 3rd album, yeah.
How do you think they've developed and changed from the first to the third?
I'll let Keir answer that one.
Well, we changed personnel a little bit. Well, actually only by one person, isn't it, really? Just
just
Byron.
drummer, yeah.
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 But the first album, when not long after I joined, I suppose, at least I'm not 100% sure about that. How long was it after I joined that we did the album? Maybe a year or 2 or something?
Yes, yeah, fairly early on in our existence.
It was quite, from my perspective, it feels like it was quite more raucous, a bit more rocky, that first album.
A bit more punky as well.
And a lot more improvisation going on in it, and stuff like that. And then after that, we've gradually got more into creating songs and arrangements and thinking. I'm just talking about my own perspective, really, but that's how I see it anyway. I know by the second album, personally, I was thinking more about what I can add to certain things to make things, sound better, as opposed to just soloing. See what I mean? And I've carried on thinking like that. And I just think we're much more song based. We still do have some sort of solo.
Yeah.
Well, I say solo, but I mean improvisations, not just me playing, but just improvisation type things.
So that's quite nice, because it leads us back to something that Simon mentioned just now. So I think we have become more kind of compartmentalized in terms of the songs. This is the song, this is the box that it's in.
Yeah.
There was previously maybe some additional packaging which wasn't really needed, so we've homed in on the songs a bit more. A.I. was a step on from Downstairs for Dancing, which is the first album, and it was nicely produced and all the rest, and some lovely songs on it. And I think we step in that way. Then we got a new drummer, the new drummer Sean, who's technically one of the finest drummers I've played with. I know Kia's got a lot of respect for Sean as a player. Absolutely. And then into the third album, which was a double album, effectively 20 songs, predominantly written during and produced during the lockdown period. Some of the songs nod towards that. But then the songs, there's one song on it, which the opening song, which is kind of the single, which is called The Real Situation, which is being a lot of airplay at the moment. Sean said, why can't we have a nice, false end on it and then go into some rip-roaring, ridiculously long solo? So we did that. We've faded it a bit, but the suggestion is when you hear it, this guy could play for hours, which is true. So, but the rest of the songs are like 3 minutes. That's the longest one. But coming back to the band, what's really great for me with the band, I think, is again, I think Kia would agree with this. The dynamics. So it's like light and shade.
Yeah.
There's the big ups, and it drops right down, and it's like this thing going through. And then we got a couple of songs, A Real Situation being a good example, where we basically free the Keo. We just go into it. It goes into the solo. It goes where it goes. Where it ends, nobody knows. But it's just a fantastic way to end a gig. It gives a nice climax to the gig, and he can go where he goes. We just go for a nod and a wink between him and the drummer, and bang, back on the same page again. We can work off each other quite well that way.
That's the sort of thing I like.
Yes, we all like it. Yeah.
It's interesting because I would assume in the time that the band has been together, you develop, even sometimes without realising, and as your relationships change, get stronger, whatever it may be, maybe a few disagreements along the way, who knows, but like generally speaking, over years, relationships evolve, should we say. How do you think the relationships between you all has evolved from sort of day one to where we are today?
Well, I'm still heterosexual. I haven't changed that.
I admire that in you.
Even though you're also beautiful.
I mean, Mike was there from the start, I suppose, so he's kind of Mrs. Icon, really. He's been there from the very beginning. He's been and he's the one that he's the.
How do you mean he's Mrs. Icon?
Like if I'm Mr. Icon, he's Mrs. Icon. We're like a married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Icon, because you came in a little bit later and Sean came in later again. So he's kind of the hub of it, and he produces stuff for his place and everything else. And Mike is just one of those guys. I mean, he's actually a very good bass player, better than I think he thinks he is. And he's always there. He's rock solid. If there's a gig, he'll just say yes. He might forget he's in a different country that day or something. He's a bit out there that way, but normally he's just up for stuff. Sean is quite pernickety, likes things to be right, a kind of ultra professional. When he turned up at the first rehearsal with us, if Kira can remember this, We'd given us some songs to have a listen to. He turned up.
He learned them better.
He was telling us something. No, it goes like this, guys. You know. So he's been like that, and kind of got like kind of sergeant major thing to him.
Because we hadn't sort of played probably for a few weeks or
No,
something.
he was absolutely on it. He was nailed on it, wasn't he?
The song's better
We
than
really embarrassed the hell out of us. So that's also helped us to be, I think, more professional and to get that bit right. And then with Keo, I think we've I think you're right. It's to some extent, you know, it's great when you go off on the solos, and when you go off on the solos, if it were happening all the time, I think it would be too much.
Absolutely.
Because when it's time, here he goes. Now he's off on one. Again, it comes back to give it the dynamics.
Well,
I think
you've got to
done that. I think
you got to look. You got to think. You know what is it all about? You know what are the songs? I mean, it comes down to the songs, doesn't it?
Have you ever listened to the words?
Sorry.
Have you ever listened to the words?
I listen to some of the words,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I don't mean exactly what the words mean.
I know what you mean.
I mean, I'm yeah, you're right. I'm terrible for words. I don't know what you're singing half the time. But no, but no, it comes down to you know whether the songs move you or not.
Yeah,
and that's
and
what,
that can happen
that's what it's
musically,
about.
can't it?
And yeah, so what I'm saying, it's not. Otherwise, it could become just one big, you know, improvisation, which would be a different band.
Yeah, but
You know.
I think Simon might find this interesting as well, because you play in a well-known kind of soul band.
Mm-hmm.
You play in a becoming more and more better known blues band, and you've played in other bands where you've been playing, you know, non-original stuff. But I think with us, I think what you like about it is you get a bit more of a free reign. You're not restricted to play in sort of certain parts, and you can kind of express yourself with original stuff. Is that what it is for you?
I just like hanging out with you guys, really.
There you go.
Nowhere else to go, I suppose.
How
it's
difficult
good
is it to navigate playing in different bands and different styles? Like,
Well, for me personally,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it works because of the variety. You know, I enjoy it. So they're all a bit different.
you must have to be quite organised with your diary as well, I suppose.
Yeah,
'Cause you
I mean,
can't be in two places at once at the end of the day.
it's not like I don't. There's not loads of gigs really.
Okay.
I mean, the main band I gig with is the soul band, it's the dance set, and you know, and we're not gigging like a huge amount, probably on average about twice a month, I think, something like that. And the other band sort of, you know, just gigs here and there. So it's not a huge amount of gigging, but there is a certain amount of, you know, sort of organisation,
Rehearsals.
thought-wise, yeah, you know, with what set you're playing, you know, and the music itself has got a lot of work sort of goes into that. So there is, but that's what I enjoy, and I do need. It's like I said earlier about variety. Really, I just find I need a lot of variety with stuff. Otherwise, it's easy to get bored. If it was all the same style, then I'd probably just want to focus on one band, you know. But yeah, I like to do different things, and it all comes down to sort of, you know, bloody blues, and in the end, isn't it? Everything we do comes down to sort of some sort of form of jazz or blues. You know, it's all that sort of scale. I mean, and folk comes into that, of course.
There's Americana in there.
Yeah.
There's a bit of folk in there. Yeah, there's a bit,
So
of,
you
bit of
could-
country.
So from an alien's perspective, it all looks the same anyway, probably.
Yeah,
You know.
but there was an interesting thing that happened the other day, because we've had a fair bit of airplay, you know, with the album, not on any national stations, unfortunately, but quite a lot of airplay, and because of the bio that's gone out with it, what they call an EPK these days, needs an update. I've updated my version, but the one that gets distributed, it's not nothing to do with distribute. It's the version they had, which is fine. But I heard it being played on a radio station the other day, and they were kind of referring to us as like a Welsh supergroup, you know, because they saw some of the bands we played in over the years.
All right.
It's almost like, you know, we just get together now and again, kind of recreationally. I mean, we've been together in one shape or form since I first went off to Mike's. It's like 10 to 12 years, you know. We're very much one of probably the longest running original undiscovered, inverted commas, bands in South Wales, you know.
Well, I mean, that what you said there is like, and we talked about this before. It's like it's unusual for people of a certain age I won't say how old I am,
You
but
cheeky kid.
to be playing original music.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You usually find, that all the original bands are younger
Yeah.
usually. And a lot of guys sort of middle age and upwards are going to be, they
Covers and
pick their
stuff like
genre
that.
and they're
Yeah.
just doing covers mainly.
So that's interesting as well, because when the album came out on July the 30th, and on July the 30th we got offered a slot on a fairly well-known festival. It's a really cool festival. I don't want to say what festival it is, but it's quite a cool festival, and it would have been on the release day. But the idea was, we can't pay you, but if your partners come along, they can get free camping for the weekend and whatever. So if we were four, like 18-year-olds, and we were lucky enough to have girlfriends,
Quite a distance to go as well.
that could work in some back and forth to quite a distance, yeah. But the point with that is, we come back off what Keogh said. I've not thought about it from that point of view before. Young bands, you're doing it probably. Music scene is pretty well, not good at the moment. Let's put it that way. But if we were a young band, you're doing this because you've got that sense of belief. You've got that youth, and you look into the future. You might just get that lucky break.
Yeah.
Let's face it. The lucky break that hasn't happened in the last 30 or 40 years for us, it's not going to come. So we're not looking for, we don't need, just give us a bit of exposure,
Yeah,
or give us a bit of a mention, this, that, the other.
Yeah.
Has to be sort of logically and pragmatically slightly more than that.
Yeah.
But going back to what Keogh said, it's nice. I think we all play the songs because we like the stuff and we believe in the stuff, and we have had some amazing gigs, and so we'll just keep on doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. There's some. I think it might be the internet age, which is, for me at least, is slightly different. Obviously, in your case, but there's a certain kind of amount of people and companies and whatnot at the moment that seem to want to pay people in exposure, and it can be a bit frustrating. Like, I've had it a few times with sponsors where they'll say, "Oh yeah, and we'll promote you on our channel," and it's like, that's not going to pay my electric bill, or it's not going to hire a studio for me and stuff like that. And it gets frustrating because they've sought me out because they've obviously seen something and thought, that'll work with our thing, but they don't want to do their end of it, which is a bit frustrating.
Just thinking the musicians' Facebook groups are absolutely full of people with different opinions about, and the exposure thing has always been a big joke, it's like, they're going to give you exposure. Okay, we'll ask a plumber to come over and do that for free, and we'll give him some exposure, and then it's always that sort of angle. And sometimes musicians, we will play for free. It depends on the situation. I mean, we talked about this a lot.
Charity gigs we do.
Sorry?
Charity gigs.
Oh, charity gigs, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's different though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
different because it's for charity for one, but also, and I think as well, it's most places, unless you're playing local to you, you've got to travel, you've got to take your equipment there, then it's your time and everything which goes into it. And I mean, they're not sharing the profits they're making from tickets and bar bills and things like this from people who are watching the music.
Do you know, just sort of a really good example? So the thing that happened with Dan Set, the other band, the soul band that I'm in, there was a big food festival that came to Cardiff in Sophia Gardens, and they were national. They were all over the country, and they showed an interest in us to play, and I thought, okay, that sounds interesting, and it's only down the road from where I live. I live in Sophia Gardens, and they were going through all this stuff. He sent us emails, and we can do this, we can do that. They didn't talk about money at all, and eventually said, okay, I think this will work. And then we thought, well, what sort of money is involved in? Oh, we're paying all the bands £90. All the bands in their national thing, they're paying them £90. And we're talking with Dan Set, particularly, like we're a 7-piece.
Well, it's not going to go far, is it?
Right. And there were one or two things, you might get a bit of food, or you might have blah blah blah, And I just read that, and I just thought, what is it with these people? I mean, they're obviously laying out hundreds of thousands of pounds to put on this food festival, But but when did they sit around in a room and say, "Oh, I tell you what, I think we can pay the musicians £90 per band"? Who decides that? You know,
It's crazy.
and I'm not a big money person, really.
No.
But
So it's not the point, is it?
there's a point when some places will take the piss, and when that's where my hackles go up, is when people take the piss like that. And I just said straight away, "Oh, I'm not doing that," and that's that.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the band agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of questions provided for me by my teenage sons, because I like to get a couple of questions off them, because obviously they look at the world very, very differently to a 40-year-old man like myself.
This is going to get awkward from you.
This could get very awkward, but no, they just, I just ask them for a couple of random questions, really. So the first one, which I'm sure you've been asked before anyway, is where did the name for the band come from?
I knew you'd ask me.
Because
that.
I got to say, it's a really cool name as band's go.
That's a
I gotta
Steve.
say.
That's a Steve question.
It's a Steve question, and Steve was thinking about this today in case this question came up.
I think we should be called King Kong Roars the Film Group at the
Yeah,
Empire
yes,
State
yeah,
Building.
that was a good name for a band. The line actually came from a song that I wrote years ago, which was called
I don't know this
Song in My Head, and it was just within the song, and for some reason I must have been looking up iconoclasts. So iconoclasts, an iconoclast is sort of someone who's like a heretic, someone who sort of goes against the grain, does things a little bit different. And if you did it to a significant extent where you become an iconoclast, the likelihood is people would know of you because you'd be quite a controversial character. So it was just like almost like a non sequitur way to call it Anonymous Iconoclast, you know, because it kind of is a thing which doesn't really make much sense. But it sort of rolls off the tongue. But it's a number of times spelling, being introduced by all kinds of things, you know. People get it wrong all the time. Once you have it, which you do, Anonymous Iconoclasts, it sort of balances out and goes against it. But yeah, that's it really.
And if you're in the band, you call us the Icons.
Yeah, yeah. And we're also anonymous. So when we play live, you know, we say, "Oh, look, you know, obviously the Icons can't be here. We're just a tribute act, you know."
It's a good name, I gotta say. I really like it, because there's some bands with some not so good names around, so I quite like it.
Absolutely.
I like it. Although I was telling myself all morning this morning, for some reason I stuck all morning in my head that it was audio instead of anonymous, and I was like, it's not, and I was just had to keep repeating it because I knew.
Could work.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking I'm going to go in and we're going to introduce you, and I'm going to say audio because it's been in my brain going round and round all day, but I managed it.
Did your other son have a question as well?
Oh yeah, so the two more, because I got three in total.
Okay.
3 boys. My youngest son said that he wants to know who the grumpiest in the band is.
I'll ask Keir to answer that.
It's he might listen.
So I know the person you're talking of, and he might listen. So should we refuse to answer that one?
I think we should refuse.
Controversial.
On the ground that we're all friends in the band.
Yeah, don't want to cause no arguments, cause any
Don't say
problems.
anything.
And then the other one asked, are you the sort of band who disagrees a lot and argues a lot, or do you kind of get on all the time?
We get on all the time, pretty much, I think. Apart from when we just have disagreements sometimes about arrangements of songs, but they're only, you know, I mean, they're all done in good faith, you know, to improve the song. So you're bound to have some sort of disagreement with artistic stuff.
I think that's.
But we get through it quite nicely. I don't think, and we've never had like a row or anything about anything.
Our worst times. From personally speaking, my most confusing, frustrating, infuriating times can be when I'm communicating with Kia when we're doing it electronically. I think there've been times there where we totally misinterpreted what the other person's saying, and that's sometimes, you know, when you're just reading something, you know, if I'm having a conversation with you, I don't think we ever argue about anything,
right?
You know, because it's just like it's normally something silly. When it's written down, you can misinterpret it, can't you?
Oh yeah.
You know, that's the only times really I think.
Well, I don't misinterpret. I get it right, and you've
that's right. That's right.
You've written it wrong.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's right.
That's correct. Yeah, you're right again.
No, I do, but I'm a great believer in clarity when it comes to things written down. There must be I'm a bit OCD about quite literal in a way.
I mean, when you're banging text messages back and forth, sometimes
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
misinterpret them.
So I will,
Or
yeah.
emails or whatever.
And yeah, I've always been. It's my fault. I've always, it's a bit of a flaw that I take things literally, and I quite often don't understand very basic things that normal people would understand. I think I come at things from a bit of an odd angle, perhaps. You know.
Well, yeah, and that goes through. It goes through like a stick of rock. You know, when you did your photography degree, he got himself a first class honours in photography, and he comes from, and it goes back. It was interesting what we said earlier about doing things differently, and I hadn't heard that story before. It kind of goes through him. He's very consciously, I think, does the opposite of what what's the norm. So what isn't the norm? Let's follow
Let's
that.
do that.
You got a love of the absurd, haven't you? A love
yeah.
of the the abstract and the absurd. It comes through in your playing. It comes through in your art. You know.
Yeah, that's true. And
Okay.
I'm a big believer in trying to do something, although futile as it is, totally futile, to try and do something a bit new. And it's just impossible because everything pretty much, especially when I did my photography course, they take great joy in telling us every day that everything has been done. You've got no choice, you've got no chance of doing anything new. I took real umbrage to that particular sentiment. I will do something.
His work is exhibited in a new cafe, isn't it, in Cardiff?
Oh yeah.
Do you wanna mention that?
I've got 2 cafes now.
Oh, they do.
And
Okay.
I did this artwork when I basically put my head on different figures out of old films, and they've ended up both different cafes. The exhibitions are in the toilet, and that really appeals to me. I mean, the first time it was an accident.
Yeah.
I gave them the images, I gave them the frames and everything, and I came back like a week later to this place, which is down near Cambridge somewhere, and they said, yeah, we were going to put them up. I'm sorry, we couldn't find anywhere. We've had to put them in the toilet. We don't mind. And my first thought was, oh, fuck, really? And I went in and had a look, and I thought, actually, this really suits it. And so when I went to the next place, there's a place in Llanishen, which I should give him a shout out.
Which is Joe's place.
Yeah, what's it called? The Walsh
It's right
cake.
by my house.
Sorry?
It's right by my house, that is. Where's it?
Oh, was it?
In Llanishen.
What the hell?
It's
Rogue Walsh Cakes.
Ah, there we go.
Rogue Walsh Cakes. And the little group of shops in near the school, that road
Yeah.
there. Do you know the place I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
Well, in the toilet, and there is my exhibition.
Excellent.
So you need to visit that
I'm going
toilet,
to go
yeah.
there tomorrow. I'm going to have to check it out.
2 of them are missing now, but yeah, so they're going to be replaced soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
But you know what, though, right? Just very quickly on that, is I understand your first initial reaction of being like, oh, they're in the toilet. But actually, do you know what? I reckon more people will see it
Absolutely.
in the toilet than they would pay attention to
Exactly
it
what I
on the
thought.
wall in the cafe or
Because
a restaurant or
when
something
you,
like that.
you
Because
know,
you don't pay
on
attention
your
to
own, when you're out and about, when is it that you're on your own and you've got no distraction?
Yeah.
You know, it's when you're in the toilet on your own. You're going to look around and say, "Oh, that's interesting." But like you said, they wouldn't have
It's
seen
probably the
it.
most interesting toilet in South Wales now.
It could be.
Yeah, because normally you're in the toilet, it's like something really, really boring, like an advert for something or something.
Yeah.
But what's that? It's great. Yeah, inspired, I'd say.
Is any of your sort of artwork and photography online at all?
Yeah, I've got a website. Yeah.
If you I was going to say if you send me links for everything, I'll put everything in the description below.
Oh, okay.
And there'll also be a link to the album and all your other albums and everything
Oh, great. Okay.
in the description below as well.
Okay.
Last question, as I like to finish off before the gentlemen are going to play us a couple of songs, which I'm really looking forward to.
Did we agree
Is
to that? Did we agree to that?
no.
Did we say we were going to do it?
Well,
Okay.
I've locked the door now.
How
So
much we getting?
the last question is, what's the meaning of life?
I got an answer.
Go on, because not many people do.
I got this the other day. I read this. Right, it's not mine.
Okay.
It was a famous sculptor. Did all the big round sculptures in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, the big round guy.
Do you know them? You don't know them? Oh shit! It begins with an H. His name. I can't remember his name. But anyway.
Homer? No.
Sorry. No, Homer Simpson.
Not Homer Simpson.
No, not. I'm talking about in the '60s, not in the,
Oh, right. Yeah.
not in the, whatever that is.
I don't know what it is.
Greek. He's Greek, wasn't he?
Could be.
No, he said. Although I thought about it afterwards, and I thought actually it only applies to him probably. But he said it like it was a general thing. But he said the secret of life, and of course I'm paraphrasing because I can't bloody remember it. He said the secret of life is to find something that you live to do, spend every minute of every day thinking and doing that one thing. He said it has to be really, really difficult. And he said the most important thing is it must be impossible to actually complete. That was his
like that.
version. So there you go.
I like that. And I think I will say now, that's the best answer I've had to that question. I can't think of anyone. There was one ages ago which he had a pretty good answer, but generally speaking, I think that's the best one.
Cool.
we had. So
I mean, you've got to take into account that the guy was an artist, a genius sculptor.
But we don't know who he is.
So
Yeah,
he
we
left to
don't know
go
what his
into
name
his.
is.
So he left to
Don't
go
know
in
who
his
he is, don't know
shed.
where he's from.
He left to go into his shed, and just do his sculpturing.
Yeah.
When
Spent
that's
a lot of
probably
time on his own.
the average person may have had some distractions. So I was talking
Excellent.
about earlier about genius. It's like you just 100% focused on that. But if you've
Absolutely.
got a real life, then you've got other things to think about.
Indeed. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. And
I
having
didn't
a
say
good
what you
chat.
thought the meaning of life is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, I can't be yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't beat that.
Can't beat that.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you very much for joining me.
you, Simon.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
I was a bit sweaty.
Yeah, same here. It's hot in here, man. There's no escaping it. I'm going to peel myself off this chair now, and these two lovely gentlemen are going to play you a couple of songs.
One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Jimmy Dean, Marilyn, Steve McQueen, and Gunga Din, standing there at their graves, which of them would they say there was a time? I know there was when we did things just because. Holding hands, having fun, dining buzz of the sun, one glow of innocence to diffidence and indifference. There was a time, I know there was, for many things, just because. Free. A little bit you, a little bit me. Geronimo, Charlie Chan, Supergirl and Spider-Man couldn't really save the world, did the best that they could. We made our vows, I know we did. We made our bed, and you lie in it just because. Just because. Just because. Just because. Looking for a bit of love, looking for a bit of fun. I had lots of time to spare. Could have been with anyone. Then it came along that day. How to let you get away. We'll make the same mistake again. the same mistake again. Had some real good times, laughing at the silly things, turning over the stones, simply for the hell of it. It became a serious one show, what I should say. We'll make the same mistake again.